My name is Kay. Standing at the driveway, I watched as my mother's hands trembled and my father's jaw clenched tightly. It was a look I'd only seen once before, on the day he buried his own father. Just moments ago, my mother-in-law, Diana, had screamed at my mother on the porch of a house that was supposed to be my parents' 50th anniversary gift. My parents, Henry and Carol, were dressed up. My mother wore her favorite purple dress, and my father was in the suit he'd worn to my sister's graduation 10 years ago. They thought they were simply going to check out a property for a friend of mine. The drive to the coast was about 40 minutes. Throughout the journey, my mother held my hand in the back seat, full of curiosity about the house and the area. Little did she know that she'd soon be standing in her new living room. But as we pulled into the driveway, something seemed off. The lanterns I'd carefully hung up 2 days ago were gone. The porch, which should have been decorated with welcome signs and a photo collage I'd spent a week putting together, was empty except for a plastic table filled with strange dishes that weren't part of the catering I'd ordered. And there, in the open doorway, gripping the frame as if she owned every inch of it, stood Diana. My mother stepped out of the car first, still with a smile on her face, thinking it was just a normal visit. She'd only taken a few steps onto the path when Diana rushed down the porch steps, pointed at the road, and shouted so loudly that the neighbors could hear, "This is our house. Get out." My mother stopped in her tracks. My father, who's always been gentle, started to shake visibly. He reached out to hold my mother's shoulder, as if trying to protect her from this situation he couldn't understand. My mother's eyes welled up immediately, and the look of confusion and humiliation was written all over her face. In her eyes, she'd just been yelled at on the porch of a stranger's home, right in front of me. Behind Diana, I saw my father-in-law, Richard, standing stiffly near the door. Inside, I could see people moving around in what was supposed to be my parents' dining room. There were pieces of furniture I didn't recognize, boxes I'd never seen before. It was as if they were setting up their own life in a house that belonged to no one but the two people standing there, shocked and humiliated. I hadn't said a word yet. I just stood by the car door, keys in hand, watching this unbearable scene. That's when I walked into the house, and suddenly, it got quiet. Diana turned around when she heard my footsteps. For a brief moment, before she regained her composure, I saw a look on her face that confirmed all the doubts I'd had over the years. It wasn't surprise, it was the look of someone who'd been caught doing something wrong. "Kay," she said, smoothing the front of her blouse, as if she was hosting a dinner party instead of creating this chaos. "This isn't what it looks like." "Then tell me what it looks like," I said firmly, using the same tone I use when dealing with a difficult situation at my job. "Right now, it looks like you just shouted at my mother on the porch of a house she's never even been in." Richard appeared behind her in the doorway. For the first time since I'd known him, he looked so uncomfortable, like he wished the ground would open up and swallow him. He didn't say a word, just stood there with his hands in his pockets, looking away. Diana quickly gathered herself, as she always did. "Richard and my husband talked about this house weeks ago," she said, waving her hand towards the inside as if that explained everything. "Considering the location and what my son Eric has told us about wanting a place by the water someday, we thought this was an investment for the family. So we started moving some things in to get it ready." I let her words hang in the air for a moment, letting everyone, including my parents, fully understand how ridiculous this was. "You thought a house I bought with my own money, and never mentioned to you, was suddenly yours to move furniture into?" I asked. Just then, Eric walked up the driveway. He'd just parked the second car full of the last of the catering supplies. His face was pale, and his eyes first landed on his mother, then on the unfamiliar boxes near the door, and finally on my mother, who was still standing there, frozen, with tears silently rolling down her face and my father's arm around her. "Eric, dear, we were just trying to help," Diana began, but Eric held up his hand. I saw a change in him, something I'd been waiting for 5 years to see. "Mom, whose name is on the deed?" he asked. She didn't answer. "Whose name, Mom?" K's, she finally said, her voice much quieter. Then it's not a family investment. It's my wife's gift to her parents, and you had no right to touch anything in this house, let alone shout at her mother on the front steps, Eric said firmly. He then turned to his father. Dad, did you know about this? His father nodded slowly, looking ashamed. That single nod told me this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. It had been planned quietly over weeks. They thought that since Eric and I were married, anything I bought would eventually belong to their family. I walked past Diana into the house and started carrying the strange boxes out to the porch one by one. No one stopped me. Eric joined me without saying a word, carrying out a painting that wasn't mine, a couple of chairs that I'd never seen before. Richard followed silently, helping to load the things into their car. His face showed real embarrassment for once. Diana stood on the porch for a long time, watching her son carry her things out of a house she'd tried to claim. When she finally spoke, her voice had lost all its confidence. I just wanted to make sure our family had a stable future. This future was never yours to decide, I told her. It was a gift from a daughter to her parents for their 50 years of marriage, and none of us has the right to take it away. They left 20 minutes later. The silence they left behind was so different from the silence when I first walked up the driveway. This silence was peaceful. My mother was still shaking, but my father had stopped trembling. Slowly, as the car drove away, the tension in his shoulders began to ease. That evening, we did what I'd originally planned. I hung up the lanterns again myself. Eric helped me put back the photo collage that had been messed up. By sunset, my parents were sitting on their own porch, just 200 feet from the water. They'd driven hours every summer of my childhood just to let us smell the sea air for an afternoon. Now, they were finally home for good. My mother cried again that night, but this time, it was tears of relief, not fear. My father stood at the porch railing for a long time, just looking at the water, saying nothing. That's how he always processes the most important things in life. 50 years of hard work and sacrifice were finally repaid in a house that no one could ever take away from them. Let me step back a bit and tell you how this all started. I've been working as a freelance graphic designer for a while, and I've also picked up some part-time jobs here and there. For the past 3 years, I've been saving every extra penny. I skipped vacations, didn't buy new clothes, and ignored the new kitchen renovation Eric casually mentioned a few times. All the extra money went into a special account named Mom and Dad in my banking app. My parents have been married for 50 years, and for most of that time, they've lived in a small, old one-bedroom apartment about 40 minutes from the coast. When I was a kid, my father would take us to the beach every summer. We couldn't afford to park near the beach, so he'd park the car half a mile away, and we'd walk the rest of the way just to feel the sea breeze. My father, Henry, worked as a mechanic for 35 years. It was a tough job that wore him out physically and mentally, but he never once complained. My mother, Carol, took care of the family. She raised me and my sister, and even took in my sick grandmother for 3 years. She always managed to make ends meet with a tight budget and never let us see her worries. 8 months ago, I found a beautiful 3-bedroom house with a small garden just 200 feet from the shoreline. It was listed at $350,000. I didn't hesitate for a second. I emptied my savings account and took out a loan against my future earnings. I closed the deal without telling anyone except my sister, who helped me with some of the paperwork from another city. Their 50th anniversary was on a Saturday. I took a few days off work and flew in 2 days early. I hired a small catering team, decorated the house with lanterns and photos of my parents over the past 50 years. Eric's unit gave him a long weekend, so he flew in separately to help. His parents, Diana and Richard, were overly eager to help with the decorations and setup while I went to pick up my parents from the hotel near the airport. Looking back, that should have been a red flag. I've never had a good relationship with Diana. She's the kind of person who can give you a compliment but make it sound like an insult. Over the 5 years of my marriage to Eric, she's made comments about me not being a good enough wife because of my freelance job, and how my parents didn't have a high-class background. I've always kept quiet because Eric promised to talk to her, and I foolishly thought that this gift for my parents had nothing to do with them. But as you've seen, I was wrong. However, in the end, justice prevailed. My parents finally got their well-deserved gift, and Eric finally stood up for me and my family. This experience has taught me that sometimes you need to fight for what's right, especially when it comes to the people you love.